When I look at where we are today, I see the need for organizations to be more resilient and adaptable as change continues to come at us from many fronts. Leaders and their teams struggle to balance the desire for short-term results with the need to build cohesive, effective teams that will sustain growth into the future. Employees are disconnecting from work and quietly looking for alternatives as the impacts from the pandemic continue to reverberate. Well-designed training courses only go so far in addressing the many challenges leaders and their teams face. Our ability to learn and adapt is what will see us through. So what happens when leadership prioritizes short-term results at the expense of long-term growth and learning? This is Growth Through Learning, a 6-part series that anchors employee learning and team development into the hands of leaders. It bridges the gap between formal training and learning that's embedded in the DNA of teams. I'm Hannah Brown. In this first episode, we'll address what's happening on the ground when organizations focus on getting things done at the expense of other priorities, leading to short-term gains and compromising long-term growth. So why does learning and development need to be prioritized anyway? To survive and grow, organizations need to build their organizational capability, which requires learning and development at an employee level and team level. Leaders and employees need a learning mindset, and teams need learning as part of their DNA. Organizations need the ability to adapt to changing environments, which requires creativity and innovation, and the resilience to deliver long-term value and sustained growth. When organizations fail to build capability through a learning mindset, team culture, and with organization support, they become one of the many companies that don't survive and don't exist past 15 years. Let's hear from various leaders and HR professionals to get a sense of the state of things.
So the culture around us is top and bottom line focused.
That's Robin Young, Director of Corporate Training Services at Durham College in Toronto. Reflecting on his past roles and experience, Robin has seen how businesses function without a culture of learning.
The goal is always to make more money. And so, that's the goal, and it's push for this, to the detriment of our people, whereby we're tasked with taking on so much work without hiring more people that most of our team is at risk of burnout. Long hours of we say yes to everything, and we're going to take it on, even if people are already working 12, 15-hour days and are exhausted. And then mistakes happen. But it's never really looked at, well, why are these mistakes happening? Maybe we need to hire more people, or maybe we need to stagger the work a little bit. It's, well, this person fucked up. Now I don't trust them anymore. We don't really look at the why. That's been a big problem. You could hire more people, but again, top and bottom line focus. And so, that creates a lot of stress for people. But I think the other thing is because there's so many people who don't get the opportunity to build proper people relationships with their managers, there's a lot of people that I know feel stuck in their roles. They're not growing. They do what they do. For the most part, they do it very well. And so that's what we have them do. So what I've tried to do with members of my team, if I find that they're interested in something else, we have coordinators who are interested in instructional design. So if I can get them to be the QA person on an e-learning module or something to kind of give them some sort of taste for this other space, I'm going to do that because it interests them, it's value for the organization. But I've actually been told to stop that because it's taking away from the work that they should be doing. And I think that's a miss because people are just going to see this as a job with no place to grow. And if we're not investing in their growth, they're going to leave. And that's happened. I think that's kind of the environment that we're in, and why I butt heads so much with my counterparts is because I try to kind of see that, well, we've got to invest in these people more than just buying them lunch once a month.
Robin sees the value of learning and development for his team, But when the priority from the top doesn't focus on learning, there's a disconnect. When I think of people working in organizations, I think of head, heart, and hand. The top of the house executives who set the strategy and make the decisions are the heads. The frontline employees doing the work are the hands. And leaders who manage teams hold the organization together. They translate what the head decides so the hands can implement it. In this way, they're kind of like a heart. You could say as the heart, a manager pumps blood through the body. They maintain the flow of information. In a more abstract way, as the heart, managers hold the feelings for the body, for the organization. Organizations are institutions, things. As the heart, leaders are the human side of the organization, bringing it to life for their employees. Leaders are the linchpin and translate the high-level strategy of the organization into a lived experience for employees. Being this heart in an organization that's focused on output, getting results can be challenging.
The pressure on leaders to meet those immediate organizational goals will overshadow the long-term benefit of employee development.
Chantel McIntyre knows this all too well. As a talent strategist, workplace consultant, and leadership coach, she's worked with many organizations that are focused on results and long-term sustained growth. This requires resiliency in the short term and adaptability in the long term. But that's not what's happening in the real world.
And my bonus, my compensation plan, is not to develop other leaders. It's to meet these immediate organizational short-term goals. So unless the organization is long-term in terms of their reward, very, very few leaders will make the time because that's not how they're rewarded.
I have seen those leaders and I have worked with those leaders. For them, the metric of success, I would assume, is not based on people. It's around performance and business results. You want to see that measurable business change, but you can't get that measurable business change without people.
Robin and Chantel both draw attention to the lack of focus that leadership has on employee learning and growth. Without creating space and prioritizing learning alongside getting results, the real problems are not being addressed. Leaders and organizations address surface issues and provide surface solutions, like thinking more training will increase employee capability and lead to higher performance. In reality, formal training only goes so far. Even well-designed and implemented programs often fall short of changing behavior and improving performance. This is because courses occur outside of the team environment. After taking a course, employees return to their work and are plunked right back into their team environment, which may or may not support them in applying what they've learned. As Robin pointed out earlier in the episode, employees are prone to making mistakes when they're overworked. They're told to meet goals and objectives and focus on the task at hand. This is a workplace with an output focus, and there's little room to learn new skills and grow. It's sink or swim. There's no room for error. It feels too risky for leaders to coach and develop their employees. Instead, leaders double down on what they know and have been successful with in the past, focusing on getting the work done to meet the demands right in front of them. They and their employees focus on output. Organizations need to be resilient and adaptable to meet the demands of our economic, social, and political climate. Yet, organizational resilience and adaptability start with employee resilience and adaptability. When learning, we are open to new ideas, we're curious to hear new perspectives, and we look for creative solutions to problems. Research has shown, and we probably intuitively know, that the most effective way to learn, even though it's the hardest, is through making mistakes. Yet in a workplace that's focused on getting results, meeting deadlines, and achieving short-term objectives, there's no time and no room for making mistakes. The stakes are too high. Leaders are so busy focusing on the objectives, they're not focused on their team. They're prioritizing tasks over people. It's an environment where employees don't feel cared for, don't feel listened to, and aren't learning from mistakes. Of course, they're not learning. They're afraid of even admitting mistakes happen. So, what happens when leaders adjust their focus by listening to employees and caring for them as individuals alongside focusing on the tasks at hand?
So it's all of that whole continuum of how to interact with people to gain that trust so they kind of rally around you.
Here's Len Schweitzer, Associate Director, Partnerships and External Relations at Michigan Technological University. When leaders don't interact with their team members on a personal level and develop trust, employees don't try new things and don't learn, innovate, and grow in their role.
Come back to this last company I worked for. When I came in, everyone was petrified to communicate about a mistake because they thought they were going to get fired immediately. I remember being there maybe 6 months and somebody brought that up in a meeting. I'm like, look, if any of you ever even heard me raise my voice at any of you when you brought an error to me, and they all look around and go, no, yeah, no. I'm like, guys, we know we're going to screw up. If we screw up the same darn thing 30 times, yeah, we got an issue, but what happened? Let's fix it and let's move on to the next thing. So it took a while for that because they were so used to hiding their mistakes, afraid of retribution, that they weren't used to that. So it took time to convince them that I wasn't going to come down with a hammer on them for making those mistakes. And so you got to show that empathy, you got to listen, and then let them, not necessarily let them make mistakes like to hurt themselves or hurt the customer or anything like that, but you trust them. So you say, hey, I'm going to go do this, try to fix this. And I saw my predecessor in another job micromanage that decision and say, well, I don't think that's right. You shouldn't do it that way. And when I would look at a problem, I'd go, well, I probably would have done that different, but I think it's safe. I don't think it's going to screw the customer up. Go for it.
Like Len, Robin's experience also shows the impact of leading with trust and empathy versus leading with a culture of fear. Failure in an output-focused environment leads to less trust, more fear, and more mistakes. Failure in a supportive environment focused on growth alongside getting results leads to openness, learning, and employees learning from those mistakes that they do make.
I've had 6 people tell me, if you leave, please take me with you. Or please
Yeah.
don't ever leave, or otherwise I'll have to leave. But it's not because I made necessarily friends with these people. It's just that, when they've messed up. For example, there's one employee who is struggling right now, and she used to report to me. She now reports to someone else. If she messes up now, she lies about it. She hides it. Where it used to be, if she messed up something, she'd come to me and say, hey, I messed this up. Can you help me fix it? And then we fix it. Now she's too afraid. The culture of fear with failing. I mean, everybody fails. We just have to make sure to not do it again. But that's the difference that we find ourselves in right now that's created a bit of a not great environment.
What Robin is speaking to is the importance of the relationship between the leader and the employee, and creating space for learning. When leaders prioritize output above all else, the mistakes employees make hinder efforts instead of being an opportunity to learn and innovate. Ultimately, performance suffers. Employees can't do their job effectively, and the one thing leaders want, results, becomes elusive. Employees aren't learning, they're not gaining new skills and not increasing their capability. Leaders can't delegate to their team because they don't have the skills they need. So, leaders step in to do the work themselves. And of course, there's no time for them to take on the work of doing when they need to be leading. As I referenced earlier in the episode, leaders can't be the hands when they need to be the heart. Of course, this isn't sustainable. Leaders realize their employees need new skills, and they see training as the answer, as opposed to looking internally at the culture they're creating.
I can speak personally to this when I've worked more in-house, but as a leader of a team in L&D, sometimes you don't understand why the request for training has come in. And it's hard to champion that if you don't believe in it yourself. And I've definitely found myself in that position of trying to understand the why. Oftentimes, learning is decided to be learning without a needs assessment being done. We know there's a problem, and therefore we will just throw training at it as the answer. And I would say a lot of clients come to us for that too, having just decided that training is the answer, and we know the danger of that. We can say yes. We can say sure, absolutely. We can we can make that training for you. And it doesn't matter if it's the best training in the world. If it's not the actual solution to the problem, then it falls back on us. The training must not have worked.
Well-designed courses only go so far in addressing the many challenges leaders and their teams face. So is training really the answer? It can be, but it's only part of the solution. When we do look to formal training, the HR and learning and development teams need to have the design skills and resources to effectively support leaders and their teams. Let's go back to Chantel, who brings an HR perspective specific to small and medium-sized organizations.
The leadership, mentoring, coaching, development happens organically because they're doing the work together more closely, more often. Organically, okay. There's that transfer of learning. And I do agree that in larger organizations, for sure, positively, and maybe even small to medium, I haven't seen a lot of L&D, but I have seen for myself, my own lived experience, when I'm in an organization as an HR leader, leaders will look to me to train their team, help them, get the coaching and training that they need. So they do depend on HR if there's no learning and development organization. And I've been tasked with, in the last company I was in, there were, 250 employees or something. So, yes, Chantal, so you're responsible for training and development. You train the leaders so that they can grow leaders. And so HR often is in the position of the leaders will depend on them, but many HR people don't have a learning and development background. So then they're tasked with, oh my goodness, how do I outsource this? Or how do I supplement the leaders? And for myself, that started, 15 years ago where I had to be organizational development plus training and development plus HR plus be a coach. So that's what happens in terms of the leaders are like this, they'll throw it over the fence in terms of this is yours to take care of and be responsible for. I'll show up and I'll do a little speak at the beginning and maybe show up, but you're going to do the rest. But then you're right. It's not sustainable because if the leader doesn't own it, then nobody on the team is going to own it.
So why aren't leaders owning it, as Chantal points out? In a workplace that's focused on getting short-term results, leaders struggle to balance immediate demands with long-term growth. In part, this stems from the leader's identity. We all start as individual contributors. Before leading teams, we were the experts in our field and praised for our work and a job well done. Our identity was as an expert. When leading others, leaders need to stop doing the work and enable their team to do it. They need to lead, not do. If leaders continue to do the work, they develop a hero identity. It can feel good to have the answers and be in the middle of putting out fires. They feel important and think, I know how to do this. I'm the best person to do this work. I've done this hundreds of times and I know I'll be successful. But the hero identity isn't sustainable. These leaders work long hours, are highly stressed, and don't feel like they can unplug. This stress extends to their employees who then also feel burnt out. They aren't developing new skills, aren't learning and growing, so start to question their role and future in the organization. Often, leaders don't realize how they're contributing to the problem.
I've done needs assessments for organizations where in having these one-on-one interviews, I find out, actually, there's one or two people at the top that are causing a lot of this struggle to enhance performance, and they don't even really realize it. It's just their metrics of success don't necessarily mesh with the rest of the team. But it's created this environment where people are anxious. They don't feel connected to the person at the top. And it's had a lot more people come to me kind of figuring out, what does this mean for me? They feel unsafe in their roles. What does this mean for the future of things? And you can say you have this amazing culture, which they believe that they do have. Amazing culture. Everyone's super happy. Everyone loves coming to work. Actually, no, because you haven't taken the time to actually find out what people are thinking. And so, we have turnover because of that.
Leaders often need a pain point to realize their role in perpetuating the problem. Robin's example of turnover is a common pain point leaders have in an output-focused environment. Chantel highlights this further.
Like usually it's pain, some kind of pain where they get an insight that, I could probably have retained more people or had less pain here. So for example, I've lost, 5 people on my team. The exit interview says it's because, I'm the common denominator. What do I need to look at here? So usually a pain point like that, or it's through some kind of insight that they have through coaching. So if they're willing and open to be coached or get exposure to some kind of training themselves where they start to learn about the data and how beneficial it might be for them to refocus on we or team building, then I see a shift.
When leaders embrace their role in employee learning and development and prioritize growth through learning alongside getting results, the culture shifts. In an environment where people are prioritized, things like high turnover and fear go down. When leaders spend the time to make their team feel like the workplace is a good home for them, team members develop and grow. The leader and the team's ability to learn and adapt is what will see organizations through.
There's a common gap where we don't necessarily take the time to know the people on our teams, who they are, and what their personal goals are, professional goals are, and being able to link those back to strategic priorities. So if we can make that connection and people see where they fit into the bigger picture and they see that the value, A, that they're adding to the company, but B, how that also adds value to them and their own goals, we get a more engaged workforce. I think that's something that is often missed, making that link.
In an output-focused environment, employees struggle to work effectively. There's little room to gain new knowledge or develop new skills. Leaders have a critical role to play in supporting formal training programs and, importantly, in embedding learning into the fabric of their team culture. This is a growth through learning leadership approach, and it includes coaching and developing employees. This is not the responsibility of human resources, and employees can't do it on their own. Growth through learning requires a learning mindset and a team culture of learning. It requires organization support for leaders so they can coach and develop their employees successfully. It is through a growth through learning leadership approach at a team level that organizations can engage employees, innovate, and develop organizational resiliency and adaptability. It's through team cultures of learning that organizations can maintain sustainable growth and extend their lifespan beyond 15 years. So how do leaders adopt growth through learning? On the next episode, we'll look specifically at the leader's role and how their behaviors can block a culture of learning, leading to short-term output instead of long-term growth.
There's something around control, right? And that telling style, when it boils down to it, to me, it comes back to control and feeling like you need to have your hands on everything. And the only way to do that, I think, is by telling and being really on top and almost like micromanaging the work of the team. And so when I started to reflect on how things were going, right, I felt very busy and overwhelmed. And the root of that was because really I was causing this issue myself.
For a more in-depth analysis of why we need growth through learning instead of short-term results, check out my book, Into the Hands of Leaders, Employee Growth Through Learning, published by Hambone Publishing in November 2024. To learn more about how to nurture a learning mindset and fostering a team culture of learning, head to my website, hannahbrown.co. Thanks to Mary Chan and Katie Pagich of Organized Sound Productions, who produced, sound designed, and edited this podcast. And special thanks to Chantel McIntyre, Christy Billen, Len Schweitzer, and Robin Young. the voices you heard on the show. I'm Hannah Brown. Until next time, remember, organizations that grow their people.